今日も冒険、みんな頑張れよ。おお、お主たちか。よく来たの。何にするのじゃ？家事をするんじゃな。
Whoa. Slick.
装備を変えるのかよ。何にするのじゃ？装備を変えるのかよ。装備を変えるのかよ。装備を変えるのかよ。装備を変えるのかよ。装備を変えるのかよ。 何にするの？なんじゃ？何にするのじゃ？何にするのじゃ？鳥新製品がラインナップされたのじゃ。何を売るのじゃ？何にするのじゃ？何にするのじゃ？さてさて、何のご用かの？家事をするんじゃな。装備を変えるのかや？さてさて、毎度ありじゃ。あ、また来たな。主張するぞ。気をつけていくんだぞ。
Items that break and get me. Did you also know that for many years you were able to use strange and bizarre techniques to get understacked items that cause weird behavior? And did you know that you can actually get negative XP that damages items? You did it? Well, better watch this video then. If you click F3 and then H on Minecraft Java Edition, you will enable something known as Advanced Tooltips. This allows you to see an item's ID name and also its durability. As I'm sure you know, when an item's durability reaches 0, it breaks. So, how do we get an item with 0 durability then? Well, what most of you probably didn't know and may have actually even encountered without realizing before is that you can actually obtain an item with 0 durability in normal Minecraft in specific but rare scenarios. Mobs can drop items they are holding and wearing, such as weapons, tools, and armor, and often that item which is dropped has a random damage value applied to it. In general, weapons, tools, and armor dropped by mobs always have at least 26 points of damage taken, except for gold tools and armor, which can drop undamaged, and normally at the very least have 25 durability remaining. It's rare to see mobs spawn with items below 25 durability, but it is possible. So, in very rare cases, mobs can drop items which have a durability of 0, and that's the only way to obtain them in order to survival. This is reported and actually acknowledged as a bug, but has been marked as won't fix, so Mojang will not fix this issue. Oh, and if you use an item with 0 durability, this is what happens. Pretty self-explanatory. But why is it that mobs can drop items of 0 durability anyways? Well, it's actually because of an old bug from Minecraft 1.12 earlier. Here in 1.12.2, I have a 1 durability diamond shovel. If I destroy a block, the shovel won't break and instead will go to 0 durability. Doing this in 1.18 or new versions will lead to the item breaking and not going down to 0 durability. This was actually reported as a bug and was fixed in a Minecraft 1.18 snapshot way back in 2018. So in 1.12.2 and earlier versions, you can obtain 0 durability items in Minecraft survival mode normally, due to the items not breaking when they have 0 durability or less than 0 durability. But the code for the durability Minecraft mobs items can drop must have not been changed to reflect that, which is why they can still drop 0 durability items, because at one stage it was valid. Notably, tridents with zero durability can be thrown, but beyond that, everything with zero durability has one final use before breaking. Interestingly, you can combine two zero durability items together and it will give them durability again, and mending can fix them. But what happens when an item's durability goes below zero? Well, to do that, use commands like so, and you will in fact get an item with durability just like one with zero durability. But then something strange happens. If we keep increasing, or rather decreasing the durability of the item further and further into the negatives, you'll notice that the red part of the durability bar extends out in the other direction gradually, and if it's an item's durability for a really negative value, the bar will extend out of the inventory and virtually off the screen. I'm sure you are wondering how far we can go with this, and plus the cutoff is the limit. Of that, will just end up giving you a normal, non-damaged item. If you give yourself an item to limit damage value, using it once will cause it to roll over and become an item with durability again, which is quite interesting. Combining them in an anvil or crafting bench will lead you to getting a brand new item as well, if the negative is low enough. Alright, so I mentioned that while zero durability items are still obtainable in survival Minecraft, negative durability items are not. Well, that's not entirely true though, as throughout Minecraft history, there are a selection of strangely specific Minecraft bugs allowing you to obtain items of negative durability. These bugs and exploits are really obscure and not well reported anywhere. Shout out to the Minecraft's Continued Features Wiki for documenting this stuff. First of all, you can obtain negative durability in Minecraft Snapshot, a 1.16 snapshot. In this snapshot, when you put soul speed on your boots and run on soul sand, it would decrease the boot's durability below 1 without breaking, allowing you to get any pair of boots in a negative durability. That being said, obtaining soul speed in this version is actually quite tough, as there was a bug preventing players from getting them from bartering, so players have to find them in structures instead. Way back in Minecraft in-depth 201, 000, through to Minecraft Alpha 1.16 version 2, golden hose with the same durability as diamond hose at 550. In Minecraft Alpha 1.
Hello, let me tell you about my new obsession, AFK Journey.
Diamond hose at 513. In Minecraft Alpha 1.0.17, this was changed to 65 to match stone tools, so if you had a golden hoe which had been used more than 65 times and updated your world with it, the hoe would have infinite durability. From Minecraft 1.4 Snapshot 12W36 released back in 2012 all the way up to Minecraft 1.16.2, mobs with helmets would burn in the sun, but the helmets would take damage and lose durability if they were exposed to the sun. If the helmet had low enough durability, it could decrease into the negatives and then drop if the mob was killed at precisely the time the helmet's durability decreases into the negatives. It required some serious luck, but according to one bug report, has happened at least once before. From the 30th of March 2024 until now, many of you watching this video have been thinking subscribe button, subscription status. If you didn't know, actually press the subscribe button to fix that. No pressure. Also, make sure you press the link in my video's description to check out my Patreon for never before released content. Anyways, for a brief period of time from Minecraft 1.14 Snapshot 18W43A to 18W43C, when shears were used in a dispenser on sheep, their durability could decrease into the negatives, allowing players to get negative durability shears very easily. In Minecraft Java Edition 1.0.0 release candidate 1, first released way back in November 2011, for some reason all swords were given only 5 durability. If you therefore had a private world with a sword damaged more than 6 times and updated it to release candidate 1, it would have a negative durability. If you then combined multiple swords with negative durability together to make them have an even greater negative durability, you could update your world and the items would keep their negative durability. If you downgraded your Minecraft world from any version beginning at 1.16 Snapshot 20W14A and up to 20W13A or 20W13B, you were able to obtain a negative durability warped fungus on the stick. In Minecraft Snapshot 20W14A, the durability of warped fungus on a stick was changed from 25 to 100. When you downgrade, 75 durability thus gets subtracted from the item, allowing you to make it negative. then combine multiple negative durability warp to fungus on a stick to make it more negative and re-update the world again, keeping the negative durability item. What's cool about all these negative durability item exploits was that if you had a super old world you gradually updated and decided to use them to obtain a negative durability item, you would still have these items today as a cool remnant of the past. Okay, so that's negative durability and zero durability items. Pretty random but interesting stuff. But what about negative stacked items, otherwise known as understacked items? Well, they are a bug dating back almost as early as Minecraft itself. Let me show you. In Minecraft 1.8.3 and ranging all the way down to Minecraft in-depth 201.00125-1, if you put an item in a chest and ignite TNT next to it, then move it in and out of the chest really quickly, sometimes you'll get a 0 item count item. Putting this item into a dispenser will allow you to not only have an infinite item duplicator, but will lead to the item stack amount going into the negatives. You can then take it out of the dispenser, and now you have an infinite item as the stack count is negative and only continues to increase into the negatives as you place the block. Now, this is technically an infinite item, but if its count increases to negative 128 or lower, when you relog, the item stack will become positive and finite again. Now, negative stack item glitches have existed for a very long time. For example, back in Minecraft Alpha 1.0.17 version 2, if you held a stack of items in your inventory, then closed your inventory and picked up the items, reopening your inventory would leave you with a negative stacked item that is now infinite, as you can see. You can relog, and this one will remain as well. Some of these older methods worked on servers at the time. For example, the drop method, where you could go down and spam the drop button until you would pick up the item at the same time you dropped it, creating a negatively stacked item. And as you can tell, these methods are all possible in normal vanilla survival Minecraft without commands, such as this one here using the zero durability mechanic we talked about earlier. In Minecraft 1.9 Snapshot 15W31A, if you shoot a bow with zero durability, which back then was normally obtainable, remember, it would become a zero stack item. This was patched in a snapshot not long after, but if you did the same but with the offhand, it still worked for some time up until Minecraft 1.11 Snapshot 16W32A. In Minecraft Beta 1.6, if you dropped a tool with a damage durability, it would create a 0 item count item. Up to Minecraft 1.10, if you had thorns on armor, it causes the durability of the armor to decrease and it can become a 0 stack item. In Minecraft Snapshot 15W31A, if you fed an animal food in the offhand slot, it could become a 0 stack item. In Snapshot 15W49, placing a single item into an item frame leads to a 0 stack item as well. There were quite a lot of these 0 stack and negative stack bugs in older versions of the game. Check out the wiki if you're curious for more. That being said, in Minecraft 1.11 Snapshot 16W32A, all negative stacked items vanish and no longer function, meaning it is now impossible to get negative stacked items in modern Minecraft versions. Alright, so if there's one more thing I want to show you guys, it's negative XP. You can use the XP add command to add negative levels to yourself and take XP away, but you can't actually set your XP level to a negative amount. It would not enter the negatives here. That being said, you can actually summon XP orbs with a negative level or value. These also won't change your XP amount. If you happen to have an item with the mending enchant on it, summoning and picking up negative XP orbs will actually reduce the durability of that tool. And guess what? If you do it enough, it will continue to reduce the durability of that tool well into the negatives. Pretty interesting. That about wraps it up though. Check out my Patreon if you want to support me to continue making videos and get some exclusive content while you're at it. Be sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching.
When mathematics students at universities start into their first semester, they are usually presented with an introductory course about the basics of what they need for the rest of their mathematical career. And within those lessons lies an important technique to be developed throughout the first semester: how to write down formal mathematical proofs. Me and a bunch of my colleagues were struggling a lot with this back then, so I want to give you an introductory lesson on how to prove anything. The subject of a proof is a certain statement which can be true or false. There are two important types of statements to prove: ones that say something about all objects of some type, and the ones that only say something about at least one object of a given type. Here are two examples. All prime numbers are odd. A whole number smaller than 0 exists. Now, aside from the fact that the first statement is false, we notice that it provides a statement about all elements of a certain type, in this case prime numbers. We denote these kinds of statements with this upside down A. The second statement, however, gives us some information about at least one element. There might be multiple, but there must always be at least one, which is usually denoted by this period E. Now, to create meaningful statements out of these types, we need logical as well as set theoretical operators. In our starting inventory, we only have 3 of these. This one is called AND, combines 2 statements and evaluates a true if and only if both of the statements are true. The next one is called OR and is quite similar but evaluates true if and only if at least one of the statements is true. Why am I putting so much emphasis on the if and only if, you may ask? Well, that's because you will hear this a lot when doing any kind of research on mathematical topics, and it just means that the relationship described works both ways, as we noticed in previous usages of the phrase. If statements A and B are both true, then A and B is also true. But this also works the other way around. And to get started, we will also need one set theoretical operator called the in or element of operator. A set is what we just call a collection of things, and we can use this operator to explain the relationship between an element and a set of certain elements. For example, we could say that the number 5 is in the set of whole numbers, usually denoted by this fancy Z. These 3 operators in our pocket will now also go on to define more advanced operators. An intersection, for example, is an operator that's very easy to understand visually, but with tools at our disposal, we could formalize it a bit. For example, we could say that the intersection of 2 sets A and B is a set containing only elements X that are element of A and element of B. You may notice 2 things about this definition. The first being the structure of anything. The curly braces used to denote a set definition, the declaration of our variable X here, and the condition section for the X to be included in our set. The second thing is the abundance of very short and undescriptive names everywhere. Even if you may notice the naming scheme of using capital letters for sets, you may still ask yourself what X, A or B even mean. These are all variables that can basically be anything you want, so it's good practice to insert something into these definitions to make sense of them. For example, if you substitute the sets A and B for colors and fruits, you know one of the elements is gonna be orange. The reason I put so much emphasis earlier on the if and only if phrasing is that a lot of statements are merely just implications or conditionals, which are kinda similar but only work one way. They consist of 2 arguments, the first of which we will call the condition and the second the result. An example would be if 2 natural numbers are odd, their sum is even. If we reverse the statement, it becomes false, with 2 and 4 being an easy counterexample. Also something to note is that we don't care about even numbers when trying to check whether or not our statement is true. This may seem very obvious, but it's an important detail when approaching how to prove an implication. Let's analyze this last part with some information from earlier. The statement we used here actually concerns all natural numbers, which is why we could use a counterexample to disprove it. Using numbers like 2 and 4 to fulfill our condition of the sum being an even number, And then, using these numbers, we show that at least one of them, or in this case both, are not odd numbers. Proving an implication about all objects is a bit more tricky, but something any math student will have to do quite often, and it is therefore also quite important. To do this, we need to assume the condition of an implication is true, namely that we have two numbers which are odd. Let's just call them x and y, and then prove the result, namely that their sum is even. To show this, we know that any odd number can be expressed by an even number plus 1. So we can express x as x even plus 1 and y as y even plus 1. Again, if all these symbols or nondescript variables are confusing you, replace them with some meaningful substitutions, like 5 for x, meaning x even becomes 4 to make sense of everything. With this, we can express the sum of x and y as a sum of two even numbers plus 2, which is then even. This proof of course depends on the knowledge that the sum of two even numbers is even, but you will quickly notice that in maths, any proof depends on some given knowledge before it. And at some point down the line, you will just have to make assumptions about the existence of numbers. But that's a topic for another video. A neat trick when trying to prove an implication is something called proof by contradiction, which can often be easier than proving a statement directly. We know that either a statement or its negation must be true, and an implication is false if and only if the result is false, but the condition is true. We can use this knowledge and show that if the result is false, the condition must also be false, and from there we follow that the statement must be true. If you didn't quite get that, don't worry, it will be way easier with an example. Suppose we want to prove the following statement. Let's use n as our variable for a whole number. If 2 to the power of n is greater than n squared, then n is greater or equal than 0. To use the proof by contradiction method, we assume the negation of the implication. So n shall now be a negative number. If that is the case, then 2 to the power of n is a fraction, but n squared is still just a positive number, meaning 2 to the power of n is smaller than n squared.
Holy
And
shit!
since this is a direct contradiction to our condition, we have now proven that this is impossible and that the statement is therefore true. Now, if you are someone starting with your mathematics studies at university and you find yourself struggling with proving stuff for the exercises, I would recommend practicing formalizing logical statements. That is, taking natural language statements and writing them down using quantas and logical operators so you have something concrete to work with afterwards. And once that's no longer an issue, make sure you have a methodical approach to solving those formal logical statements. If you have to prove something for all elements, don't be overwhelmed, and just start with the methodical approach of choosing an arbitrary one and think about its properties and what you can conclude from those. Even if a problem seems very unsolvable, approach it formally and then check the tools at your disposal. Alright, once again, thank you so much for watching. I'm not sure if this video will do too well, but I thought it's a very important topic that I noticed many people, including myself, struggling at the beginning of their university studies.
Before getting into JoJo characters solving other franchise cases, I wanted to see how well they can fare against their own. While the Morio Warriors did their job on trying to find Kira as best as they can, the biggest leaps in the case were brought to you by Shigechi, accidentally, and Hayato, because Kira's biggest weakness is himself. With that in mind, could the Stardust Crusaders solve the same case if put into a similar position? To make it difficult and I guess accurate, we'll be removing the Morio Warriors from this. All the enemy stand users are who they are still, but Josuke and Koichi are going to school like normal. I know we'd have to worry about the whole Angelo setting off Josuke and all that, but let's pretend that Angelo is just bothering other people for the time being. Now, what are the utilities we have access to that'll help the group find out that Kira is a problem and eventually find out who he is. Now, while not in Japan at a later age, Joseph had been using his stand Hermit Purple, but Hermit Purple's accuracy had been affected due to the large amount of stand users present in Morio. The main ability is to divine information, meaning that he can display any information that he wishes to see, but as long as there isn't any issues alongside it. He can figure out that there are issues in Morio, but without a specific enough, I guess, desire or wish, he won't be able to pinpoint Kira. I think it's mainly because of his age, and not exactly less because if there are a bunch of stand users, I think that is going to be a huge issue. But I feel as though Hermit Purple would have better scope if he had been younger. But, well, after that, what else can we do, right? Kakyoin can cover a large range, that's cool. Avdol had connections back when they were going to find Dio in Egypt, but I don't think he has the right connections in Japan for this. Ikki has a good nose, a great nose even, for when we get evidence or something to work with, and Jotaro and Polnareff are the muscle for now. Now, as for what they're up against, well, we know that Kira is this sinister antagonist with the ability to blend seamlessly into society. And it's not his natural personality, but this crafted facade that he's been able to work and maintain so well. Alongside that, his stand Killer Queen with the ability to turn everything into a bomb completely removes the idea of evidence. He also has a secondary stand called Sheer Heart Attack, so that, you know, even if you were running from Kira and the body's getting hotter, because that's what happens when you're running, Sheer Heart Attack will definitely end up being your demise anyways. So for the Stardust Crusaders, this means confronting an enemy who doesn't stand out, who doesn't wish to conquer or broadcast his power, but simply wish to live quietly with his, deadly compulsions. This challenge is not just finding a needle in a haystack, it's finding a needle that doesn't want to be found in a haystack that's still constantly shifting. It's very difficult. The Crusaders aren't just tasked with identifying him among Morio's tens of thousands of residents, but they're also doing it in a way that can outsmart his caution and his stand's lethal efficiency. Granted, they don't know this stand's lethal efficiency, but you get the idea. I have a way they could figure it out, but it's biased considering that I know what Kira's capable of. I'll try to get into the minds of the characters after, but it is rough. But Joseph at this time has his sense and a lot of money alongside utility with the Speedwagon Foundation. Without drawing attention from the government about, solving a crime over international waters, I think it would be a good move to hire some private investigators in general, similar to the whole
I already figured that out.
Mansion thing that they did. They can do something similar.
I was actually just about to do that.
Various investigators around Morio looking for whatever oddities truly exist. But I'm not sure how well that worked. Because there will be oddities in Morio, but they won't always be Kira because there are a lot of other stand users, so I'm not really sure. The best case scenario is that when Kira is pursuing his next victim, one of the informants are tailing him without him knowing. He will eventually know, but as long as they relay the information of what Kira's build is, Kira's time would be limited. There aren't too many people in Morio that match the description of Kira, so with that in mind, they'd eventually get to him, even if a bunch of stand users had been sent their way. But say that isn't possible, right? Because I've just made it, I guess, extremely easy for the sake of the scenario, but at the same time, if I was Joseph with that much money, I'd do the same thing. But, if that isn't possible, then goodness gracious, this might be scary hours for the Stardust Crusaders, because realistically speaking, what are they supposed to do? Honestly, I think it's possible that the Speedwagon Foundation has new technology to help, but we really have to think about it because Joseph and Jotaro were there originally. And even if the case is that, Joseph then was just really old, but Jotaro is at least of similar caliber of, old Joseph at a younger age, possibly even better, realistically speaking. And especially considering that, right now he'd be a better vetted stand user at a younger age than Stardust Crusaders Joseph. We really don't want to put this off to the side, Jotaro in Part 4 is a really good point in his life, even though Star Platinum, for some reason, is just weaker. Honestly speaking, I think it would be actually easier to find Kira from Death Note than Kira in Part 4, considering that being surrounded by stand users messes with Hermit Purple so much. And I might be hyperbolic, but because it's like, oh, okay, what are we gonna wish with Hermit Purple to actually find Kira? But I think that's just gonna call for the actual video where we go in depth about it and everything. But, genuinely, please, like, what do they do here? I think Iggy could track him if there were any pieces of evidence around to trail him, but how do you find someone who doesn't leave evidence? One of the biggest issues is that I'm also working with what they've given me so far. And L, for example, he works with the police and looks to police reports to see what's going on, to be able to narrow down the type of victim that goes missing, the ratios, the time spans, all that. And I will say, Jotaro does do a pretty good job at trailing behind Kira, For example, you remember when he went to the apartment after Kira had already been there? So that's, that's a better Jotaro in this instance. Like, this wouldn't be Stardust Crusader Jotaro. He's nowhere near as smart. I don't want to say stupid, but he's just not as smart as older Jotaro. Like, that's just going to be the case. And I think if old Joseph is potentially as capable as DIU Jotaro, I mean, he's a really smart guy, genius and all that, then I guess that means that he'd be able to piece it together bit by bit, just probably with as many casualties or maybe more happening than it should. But all it takes is, I guess, one interaction that Kira made contact with something, putting his hand against a wall and left his scent somewhere. That's the best case scenario. It's not that I don't believe that they can't do it. It's just that it's kind of hard to navigate through the character's eyes and try to work off of it all, because considering Stardust Crusaders, they didn't really give us much to work with in terms of, oh, how exactly did you find Dio? Like, yeah, we tracked him down to his big old mansion that he doesn't move around in, because he just stays there. That's his mansion. He's not going anywhere. He's still trying to reach him, It's a lot different than Kira, who's just moving around throughout Moria, doing whatever the heck he wants to do because he can. Now, it's easy to say that they'll eventually get him for whatever reason. Like, that would be the correct YouTuber response, that, they do get him in the end. Due to the fact that, they're not necessarily given a time span, and it's just more so about getting him before he ends up getting them. But I guess that's the great thing, because you have a bunch of hitters with the Stardust Crusaders, so him getting them is not really like that's going to be a lot of trouble for him. If given the same time span as DIU before Kira got Bites the Dust, and I was asked, hey, could they do it before that, if given the same exact amount of time, then I'll say that it's possible, purely for the fact that everyone took care of their personal goals at the end of Part 3, and they don't have to deal with any of that now, and just go about a bunch of side missions and yada yada yada. That's not everything that they have to deal with. They're purely just focused on, hey, we gotta get this Kira guy. But my thing is, how? That's the issue. I think the signs point towards that it'll be extremely difficult / they just can't. If they were given an actual, good set amount of time, it's just like, hey, how exactly are you going to do this? Please give me all the answers and thoroughly explain as to why they could fully do it. I honestly don't have anything for that, Now, I do think that I'm going to end up seeing something like I potentially largely missed, and they'll be like, oh, it's in the comments, and they'll be like, oh, what you need to consider about this thing. But sometimes these comments also have everyone having a counter-argument for the same thing, and that's why the big comments don't even work all the time, so... No, I see that, but I do want to know in general. But I took a good look at, all of our stand users, what they're capable of in terms of power, and it's just assessing more so their intelligence than anything that they can actually do. Joseph was our best case, and he was already here. I understand that he was weaker, but he was here, and we would end up probably having the same issues, even if Hermit Purple had been more efficient. Again, really look at how Kira in general had been discovered. It was a bit-by-bit process of I don't want to say a lot of his own follies, but if we're being real with ourselves, if Kira had moved just a tiny bit better and was a little bit more on his toes, he wouldn't have even gotten caught. He's extra. And if we're purely going off of the fact that him being extra will eventually be the reason why the Stardust Crusaders beat him, then fine, but that does sound like a cop-out answer, to be honest with you. Now, as a final answer, they should be able to, but I personally can't see how directly, especially considering the Morio Warriors, with a lot of the members that lived there for a large period amount of their life and yada yada, also didn't figure it out either. And you have Jotaro, who has more resources in this time of 1999, who end up didn't find him either before Ayato. That was just the case. He didn't, and it's really rough to see here. And before saying bye, also think about this. We have Crazy Diamond, who can essentially oh, hey, here's a piece of the hair, let's make it go back to the user. There wasn't enough evidence ever left, period. And normally, if that was the case, they probably wouldn't been able to. They would be able to capitalize on that, but we don't get anything. Why? Because you're probably not going to. He's a very, very meticulous killer, and I can see as to why he ends up winning in this case. Thank you all for watching. I might spin this around and have the Morio Warriors or some other group in JoJo try to see if they can find Kira from Death Note. Ooh. But that's all on reception, Hopefully I'll see you all.
.1%. It checks 0.001 block away from where you are just to catch edge cases. I assume this was fixing a previous issue in the code. They're like, oh fine, just check around a bit. So if you're so close but not quite, it's still going to register it. So it actually records you as being on land. Now you slam into the ground. Now on ground is true. It enacts
negotiations are
damage
supposed
that has
to
a
be
look
as well?
to see if you were previously in the air, but you're not. Because the previous tick, even though you hadn't hit the ground yet, it has still recorded you as being on land. So it assumes the damage you're receiving is not because of a fall, it's for some other reason, and you're not protected against that. And that's why the boat and you get damaged. It doesn't realize you're falling because one tick, the smallest quantum of time in Minecraft, you were not quite on the ground, so on ground was still false, but you were close enough to the ground that your status switched to being on land.
Now it's time to work out where those numbers were coming from. We saw before there's 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up. Times 0.04, that gives us the distance you're falling. If this is all the way up to some number n, we can replace all of this with the equation for a triangle number, which is n times n plus 1, all divided by 2. And that times our 0.04 has to equal, some whole number k to get that alignment. We need the 0.04 to become a whole number, which means the triangle number has to have a factor of 25, which is to say, actually, if we were to simplify this down, we could remove it on that side, is 25 times some constant, because 25 times 0.04 is 1. So how do we know when our triangle number here is a multiple of 25? Well, triangle numbers, as you can see at the top, are some number n times 1 more than that number, n plus 1. Actually, which is why triangle numbers are always whole numbers, despite being divided by this 2 here. Because if you've got 2 consecutive numbers, one of them is a multiple of 2. So n times n plus 1 is always an even number. We need this whole number to have, a prime factor 5 and another prime factor 5. So there's a 25 in there somewhere. Famously, multiples of 5 are at least 5 apart. So we can't have n can't be one multiple of 5 and n plus 1 another multiple of 5. One of them has to be a full-on multiple of 25. And it actually can be n, or it could be n plus 1 in this equation. Time for a worked example. So let's take 25. Why not? It's 1 above 24. The triangle number of 25 times 24 divided by 2 is 300, which if you divide that by our 25, that equals the 12 block drop that we saw at the beginning. But the next number up is 26. And the triangle number you get from 25 times 26 divided by 2 is 325, also divisible by 25. That gives you a drop of 13, the next number on the list. And the next multiple of 25 is 50. That works. The triangle number between 49 and 50 is 1,225. That gives us a fall of 49 blocks. And 50 to 51, 1,275, gives us 51. The equation in general is you've got 25, some multiple of it,
You then multiply it by the number either above or below it, because both work. You divide that by 2 to get the triangle number, and then you divide that triangle number by 25 to get the number of blocks you're going to fall. And this equation perfectly generates and explains all the numbers we saw in the original short. Oh yeah, and we could cancel these. Fun side point, of course I made a spreadsheet to double check my formula definitely worked and check that it would generate all of the values we saw in the short, and sure enough it does, except this one here, which was missing. This one wasn't in the original short for some reason. When it comes to this pair, they've only got 202. There you go. Oh, and yes, of course, you can extend this for bigger values, but this is the ones that we see in the game. One last footnote, I had to mention before, the boats were empty in Ollie's simulation because he noticed if you've got a player in the boats, it slightly changes the behavior and it doesn't break falling from some level. Something to do with how the game is processing whether or not it counts as a vehicle, but we decided that was one step too far for now. That's it, and that perfectly gives us that list of numbers we saw in the original short. There you have it. That's how floating point errors and triangle numbers solve a mystery in Minecraft. I'm so pleased with how this went. Huge thanks to Natalie for sending that in. And if any other viewers see interesting mathematics in the wild, please do let me know. Thanks to CamMan18, actually that's how it's pronounced, for making the short in the first place and bringing it to our attention. And thank you.
I think you've been caught up with the Mario Maker.
$13,000 health. Leg bind. Weakness. Although that only protects us from one attack against it.
Yoshi. できるかな。もらうぞ。行きます。こちらをどうぞ。
Community as a blade, you may have heard of Team 0%. Due to Nintendo wanting to murder Wii U and 3DS Online, that meant there was only a limited amount of time to play uploaded courses on the original Super Mario Maker. Team 0%'s goal was simple, to clear every uploaded course before the service shut down. As of writing this script, they actually just completed this goal. This all got me thinking back to the original Mario Maker, and I eventually remembered that that game came with a few sample courses. These were pre-built by Nintendo and were meant to help give ideas on what to make for your own stages. I haven't played these since the launch of Mario Maker in 2015, so I thought it'd be fun to make a video ranking all of them from the worst to the best. After replaying through all of these stages for this video, let me just say, you all are not prepared for how Despite there being 68 levels to rank, this is a fairly short video in comparison. Most of these levels are Mario Maker 2 story mode levels were incredibly fun and creative, but these are not that. We're going to be judging these stages based on how fun they are, how much content they have, and how creative they are. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. At 200k, I'm ranking every 2D Mario level, and let's jump right into the list. 16. Spinning Boo Buddies. This level lasts for approximately 5 seconds. Literally, the entire level is a single staircase with a boomerang on a track. It takes absolutely no effort to beat and isn't creative in the slightest. I guess if you want me to compliment it, the ghosts are smooth. Yeah. 67. Cornucopia. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, this level lasts for way too long. This is an auto-scroller, which if you've seen my previous videos, you know that I don't really like. They usually just slow down a level and make it drag on for far longer than necessary, and that's definitely the case here. This is over a minute of just collecting points. There are barely any enemies, and most of those enemies are just Lakitus dropping points. I don't understand how anyone could like this level. I mean, what do you even need coins for in this game? You can't buy a Amiibo costume, so it's just pointless. What I guess is even worse is that this level likely inspired little babies to make something simple, just truly criminal. The only reason this is above last place is because at least it feels like a tiny bit of effort put into it. Plus, it shows how different the game's suspension shootout points. Still though, this level is awful and goes on for far too long. 66. Underwater Automation. First off, I don't like underwater levels. They're just not fun to control Mario. Secondly, I don't like auto levels. Believe it or not, putting your controller down and doing literally nothing is not that interesting. At the very least, this level lets you swim through it without having to watch the auto, but that's not really fun either. Like the last level, this is also guilty for the crime of inspiring people to make auto levels, which absolutely played Mario. Still better than refreshing special levels, at least for auto levels I'm not having a seizure. 65. Superstar Dash. You get the star and then you run through some enemies. Did a 5-year-old design this? 64. Even trampolines dream of flying. At first I thought this maybe had a chance of being interesting. While yes it is another auto-scroll, its idea is solid, having springs with wings flying over the void. Too bad it lasts for 10 seconds, I guess we can move on. 63. Find the fire flower. There are 2 spiny towers in front of you that are too tall to jump over. To get past them, you have to find a fire flower. The fire flowers are located in these blocks of feed, but only 2 of them have the flowers. So that makes this a guess and check game. And as soon as you do find the flower, the stage just ends. Incredible. 62. Spiny Tower Demolition. Wow, I guess someone really hates Spiny because you have to destroy another tower. This time though, you have to use a Koopa, which is launched from a bullet blast off the top. This one is better because you don't have to guess and check, and the Koopa jump scare can be fun. 61. Attack Stack. Basically the exact same thing, but the enemies are all different, and the Koopas come from behind. 60. Creepy Crawly Bowser Tower. Okay, we have a more original idea now where 3 Bowsers are shooting fire at the player. You have to avoid it until you reach the end, which is kind of a cute idea. Sadly, this is an auto-scroller that once again lasts for about 20 seconds. At least this idea did have potential, unlike the last one. 15. Be brave and get up close. For this level, you have to find the star in these question mark blocks to kill the chain chomps. I find this to be better than the fire flower one from earlier, only because moving in and out of the chain chomps' attack range is more fun. It's still a boring plot level though. 58. Underwater. Real exciting name this one has. If you couldn't tell, this takes place underwater, and it's just about the most generic Mario water course ever. Normally I'd place a course like this at the very bottom, but at least this feels like a level, even if it's not really fun. You can just spam A and ignore everything. 57. Sunken Mario. This is our final fully underwater course. I like it more than the last one just because it's more memorable, having a ton of different pixel art. The level gameplay-wise isn't that interesting though, you just have to avoid a few movements. It is pretty easy, but I somehow managed to get cornered. 56. Bowser Retreats, Mario Advances. Here we have ourselves another cool Bowser. This doesn't go along the track and shoot fireballs at us when we charge and do ducks. Again, I do like the idea here, but the level is just too short. It looks like it stops right as it gets going. 55. One Airship Remix. This is the first of several remix courses. These all take levels from previous Mario games and slightly change them up. For the most part, I think these are just really boring reuses of previous layouts, which is not helped by the fact that there are 16 remix levels. Anyway, the reason I think this is the worst one is because it's an auto-scroller. This is based on one Airship from Mario 3, and I feel like the changes weren't that interesting. Since Mario Maker 1 didn't have Larry, they also replaced it with Bowser Jr. But since launch Mario Maker 1 didn't have keys, you can just ignore it. That pretty much just makes this a worse version of it. 54. 8B Remix Airship. This also comes from Mario 3 and is low for the exact same reason as the last. I do like this more as the giant winged rocky wrenches are a decent update. They also tried to make fighting Bowser Jr. required by making us need to use the clown car, but funnily enough, you can still just jump into the fight. 53, Airship, another incredibly cool type. If you can believe it, it's another auto-scroll airship, but I put it above the last two because it's actually an original level. I mean, they decided to put a tiny speed effort. 52, Drybone Stampede. This is another auto-scroll level, but this time you have to jump on Drybones to the end. This is also kind of short, but I like the idea here decent enough. It's probably because I'm biased for Drybones. If this was a bit longer, I think I'd like it much longer. 51, Zigzag Lava Bubbles. Once again, another auto-scroll level. The obstacles here are pretty neat. You're stuck in a tight corridor with winged lava bubbles, which can be somewhat tricky to avoid. This level is still extremely short, though. Festival of Fire. Basically the same as the last level, but Lactus are throwing the fireballs instead. I think I prefer the added chaotic randomness to this level, but also weird that lava bubbles are the main gimmick. 49, Music Notes. We are finally out of the auto-scroll section, and now we just have more nothing. Based on the name, you may think this would be a music level, but no, it's supposed to be a music sheet with random note blocks. There's also shelmets bouncing off them. Yeah, somehow there's no music blocks in the stage, which is just so stupid. This level is also tiny, but the reason I put it above everything else so far is because getting the triple jump here to skip the vine is kind of fun. I am so desperate for this level. 48, Jump Point. In this level, you have to use springs to avoid lava bubbles. That's kind of a fun idea, but it also ends after 4 jumps, so who cares? 47, Go for the 3-up Stomp. Yeah, you can just run past all the wigglers to the end. There's not even a good idea in this level. They want you to try and jump on the wigglers to get a 3-up, but that's a waste of time. It was kind of fun to jump between the semi-solids though, so there's that. 46, Kapow. This is meant to show off how POW blocks can work. Sadly, it does a terrible job since you don't need to use a single one to beat the stage. And it was kinda cool how the pipes mix you up between POWs and Koopas, I guess. I don't know. 45, Muncher. This is a giant Muncher pixel art, and once you reach the top, you have to hit a P-switch and oh, that's pixel art was cool. There was a level to go with it. 44, Ground. This is just about the most generic Mario level you can think of. It takes place in the Oak World, and you have to get to the flagpole. There is a minor Lakitu cameo, but other than that, it's nothing special. 43, Blocktown. This is kind of a cute idea, but it's ruined by its execution. You have to enter into this house made of blocks, but instead of something interesting inside the house, it just becomes a thicket. You have to find which door leads you to the other side of the house. Once you get out, it's cool to jump over the houses, but that doesn't really last very long. It's up here because the block-built houses are cool, but otherwise this level is dark. 42, A P-Switch's Journey. The idea here is kinda cute, where you have to watch as a P-Switch gets delivered to you. There's really not much game. It's like one tough jump to avoid a lava bubble and burner, but otherwise this level's 41, 1-1 Remix Ground. You know, I was gonna put this so much lower on the list because of how overdone 1-1 remixes are. This game just has so many garbage sample courses that this somehow almost made it to the halfway point. The most interesting change I noticed were the bullet-bill point launchers in the sub-area. Otherwise, this is exactly what it is. 40, 1-2 Remix Yoshi. This is taken from Super Mario World, and the changes here are really good. They fall into 2 camps. One is just sound effect spam, so that's not interesting in the slightest, and the other changes are just things they had to change because the element doesn't exist in Mario Maker. We'll see forever. Woo!
同じ目的の人だから助けたの？なら敵対する人でも助けるの？
Depends.
見せてもらうよ。この先でも。何かある。 呼ぶ声がする。
Nearly there. Isle of Cascades. Nice. Who?
君たち何者だい？水兵じゃないよね。
Generic anime protagonist looking guy.
ああ、そういえば少し前にマギニアの飛行都市が飛んでいたね。あれで来たのか。僕はね、君たちとは別のルートでここに調査にやってきたんだ。レムリアの秘宝を見つけるためにね。
Have you heard the legend? It's said the ancient civilization of Lemuria once thrived on Yggdrasil's power. But its people were foolish and misused it. Yggdrasil's blessing was lost from then on, and soon after Lemuria perished. So state the Lemurian records. I rather enjoy legends of this sort, don't ya? You're searching for the treasure as well, yes? Well then, may we both do our very best.
Oh, また来たな。朝までお休みだね。ねえねえ。そっか。ふふ。なになに？
Okay.
みんな頑張れよ。おお、お主たちか。何を売るのじゃ？取引成立じゃ。
Pangganisa.
何を売るのじゃ？
talismans.
おお。銭の香りがしてき。毎度ありじゃ。
おや、君たちどうするのか。どれにすっか決まったかな。最近冷たくない？いらっしゃい。
Oh. Alright, I guess he's gone for now. I wonder what happened.
どうした？
Oh, hello.
他に何か？おお。
What? You found the next geomagnetic pole? Well done. On behalf of Her Highness, I commend you. Man, that's a lot of XP. This means we're now well over halfway to Yggdrasil. Once we pass through the next island, the tree should be just within our reach. The princess? I see, so you hadn't heard. It would seem Her Highness has fallen ill. She's currently on bed rest, so I'll be assuming her duties here at HQ in the meantime. Fortunately, I've been told her condition isn't too severe. She should be back to full health soon enough. While we await her return, I'm sure it would greatly please Her Highness if you proceeded to the Isle of Cascades. Head out when ready.
気をつけていけよ。
Yikes. Let's see what we've got. Oracle Bridge. Which game is this from, I wonder? I feel like this is from the second game. I wouldn't know though. I'm only in the second dungeon still. Yeah, this is from 2. Whoa! Wolfgar had a freaking child! Good for him! Hello there. We know your dad. Oh boy, this one will suck.
39, HS3 Remix Hammer Bros. This level asks the daring question, what if they remade the Super Mario Bros. Hammer
God,
level,
they're
but made
fast.
it easy? Yeah, they give you a shellman at the start, which negates most of the Hammer Bros. Attacks. That's also the biggest change in this level, so it's pretty much just worse. At least as a level, it's funish to play. 38, 8-4 Remix Castle Labyrinth. Taking a look at the very next level from Super Mario Bros., we have the final one, which I have never really been a fan of. I don't like pick-a-path sort of levels at all, and that's pretty much what it was. Add on the water segment, and that takes this down even more. If it's anything though, this level does have some mystery mushrooms. I probably wouldn't care that much, but seeing as Mario Maker 2 decided to kill this feature, I miss it. 37. 3-1 Remix Infinite 1-Ups. Another one from the original Super Mario Bros. This doesn't have any interesting changes, but as a level, it's more fun to go through than 8-4. Something at the top of the level which I saw on the map, but I really couldn't care less than trying. I guess it is cute that it's named after the Infinite 1-Up trick that this level is infamous for, but beside that, I got nothing more to add. 36. 1-1 Remix Raccoon Mario. This is a Mario 3 remix, so that's a little bit more interesting than the original Super Mario Bros. Some enemies are now towers, which make them harder to avoid. Not much else changed though, so it's another pretty uninspired remix. 35. 7-2 Remix Piranha Plants. Another Mario 3 remix. This time it's for a level that I didn't really love in the original game because they have water segments. I would say I like it more than the last level though, just because it's a more original choice to remix. 34. Conveyor Belt Sprint. We are now officially halfway through the list, and we're still not at levels I like yet. This entirely takes place on top of conveyor belts, and you have to try and avoid the Koopas walking on them. This level just looks very unprofessional, with pretty much only the bare minimum being placed here. At least running on conveyor belts can somewhat be fun.
Really? These are the cells?
This level has to ride a blue skull coaster, and you have to avoid some cells. The idea really isn't that creative, but it at least felt like it had a tiny bit of challenge. It's also quite short, but compared to some of these other levels, it's not too bad. 32, Up and Over. This has the kind of cute purpose of showing the player how to make a spring tower. It's not challenging in the slightest, but I'm sure at the game's launch it was cool to see what would happen if you place all the springs into a tower like this. Also, I totally forgot Mario Maker 1 has different item musics from Mario Maker 2, so my stuff just kept bouncing off. 31. Tracks. This level is obviously meant to showcase some of the things you can do with the track element. This is pretty much split into 3 different parts. First you have to jump between moving platforms, then you have to avoid saws like conveyors, and finally you have to ride a blue platform while avoiding more saws. This actually feels like a decently developed idea, but unfortunately that last section drags on for way too long. It lasts for about 45 seconds, which it really didn't need to. I think I would have liked this a lot more if at one point you moved from the standard blue platform to a waiting blue platform, just to add on to the concept and have it move. 30, switch it up. This level is all about using the P-switch to your advantage. It shows that you can use it to make bridges and destroy blocks that are in the way. It goes off of make levels harder by removing the bridge in this section. The thing about this level, though, is that there is a lot, some of which being pretty unnecessary. For example, to get the last P-switch, you have to wait for the current one to run out, but it's not like having that one on creates any sort of cheat.
It's so nice that
had to remove the several bits of waiting and
they get stunned to prevent
Boat Dungeon. Bro, I love skeletons.
getting perma-locked
This level is all about the skull
out of
lifts and dry
escaping.
bones. First you have to climb up a tower of the skull lifts while avoiding the dry bones, and then you have to go back down while avoiding the projectiles again. This can be somewhat challenging, and it's also kind of fun to try and speed up the descent by skipping several lifts. Then at the end of the level, you have to ride a skull coaster to the goal while avoiding more thrown bones. This is another level that's a bit short, but I had some
So
kind
this
of
is either the third or the second to last dungeon in the game, or straight up the last dungeon in 2.
Is a level I like from that game. It's pretty short and simple, but I like the idea of small ice platforms.
It would make sense.
Remix doesn't really change that much, but I still had fun with it. 27,
Summer, fall, winter, then
also coming
spring.
to us from Mario 3, we have that game's chain jump level. The main change here
For
is
all
that
of the
the chain
for
jumps
all
are
4
now jumped,
dungeons.
which I think is a pretty good and understandable tweak. 26, 2-3 Remix Pyramids. Of these Mario 3 Remix courses, this was my favorite from the original game. I just like the idea of using semi-solids to create pyramids. In this remix, they also replaced the bouncing fireballs with no-coach chain jumps. Probably because they aren't in Mario. I also like how the ending of this changed.
What the hell are these?
Coming out of the bricks the Koopa Shell bounced off of in the original. It's a pretty cute Mario Maker touch. 25. 1-2 Remix Underground. 1-2 is a classic level from the original Super Mario Bros, and while remaking it is probably a bit overdone, I do like this level for one simple reason.
You're gonna turn into a Goomba!
Yeah, this is another level with the Mystery Mushroom, and due to how much I miss it, I like this a lot. I also think it was cool to let the Warps in at the end give the player a different Mystery Mushroom costume depending on what type of 24, 1-3 Remix Athletic. Moving on to the very next level, and I like this a bit more because A, 1-3 is less overdone, and B, the mystery mushrooms are far more prevalent here. Plus, I always like the tree stages in the original Super Mario Bros. Since they're pretty fun to parkour through. 23, 1-4 Remix Castle. And ending off the original Super Mario Bros. World 1, we have that World's Castle. I like it the best of these remix stages because
it auto
has the
maps.
best design in the bunch. They included a lot of extra fire bars here to make it more
Interesting.
dangerous. And of course, they let us play as Bowser himself through the mystery mushroom. 22. Danger Fire Bars. Exiting out of that second wave of remixes, we're starting to get into levels that are somewhat decent.
Whack.
Anyway, this is all about dodging fire bars on tracks. This can lead to some fairly tricky jumps, especially if you try and do this level fast. Once again though, this is another level that ends before it really starts. 21, Easy Does
I
It.
guess this is
Far
what
from
we're
the most
dealing
creative
with
idea
now,
out there, but I do kind of like carefully squeezing by these fights. While I again wish it was longer and more expanded on, this at least has a little bit of content. 20, Sound Effects. As the name implies, this is meant to show off the game's wacky sound effects. Despite that sounding like a kind of lame idea, they actually end up doing a decent amount with this level. It's not really cohesive in its design, but it shows off many scenarios where sound effects can be used, such as hitting question mark blocks, getting into a shoe, jumping across spikes, and even flying into ground fall. Lengthwise, this is one of the better sample courses too, so I thought I should give it credit. 19. Shell Shot. This is a solid gimmick once again, this time being shells and springs. There are 3 areas with Koopas and 2 sideways springs at each side. You want to use the shell to defeat the enemies, however doing so will make the shell an obstacle to avoid, which is kinda cool. But like I said, there's only 3, and if you just run past them, which is pretty easy, that's the stage. Really wish they
I
18
get it.
Blaster Barrage. This is the somewhat decent
It
theme
goes
of
in a
showcasing
straight
how
line
blasters
based on how
work
you
in shells.
enter through.
It's got a pretty natural
Interesting.
evolution of the concept where you first have to dodge them on normal ground, then on conveyors, and then end with multiple shellments coming at you.
Ooh, are you the new master for?
ジュニア
Oh, more Magus.
どうそっちに水兵の姿はあったの？見覚えのない顔ね。あなたたちはもしかしてマギニアの冒険者かしら？
Yo, sup? We're from Uri. We kinda know Junior over there, or at least he seems kind of familiar. Maybe. Did you guys perhaps come from High Lagarde? We've kinda been there. We're kind of officially unofficial citizens and everything.
そう、本当に飛行都市がこの島まで来てしまったのね。
Artelinde. Wait, you're part of the seafarers? Alright, so I guess he fucking too before he died in the first fucking dungeon. If you advance beyond the Petal Bridge, you'll arrive at the Seafarer's base. It's a solid staging ground. Close to the ocean, the Seafarers are currently scouring in their quest to find the Lemurian treasures. I was part of the scout team, and the rest of them should have landed about 6 months ago. I've been trying to regroup with them. I'm in a hurry, since the Seafarer Princess is so impatient. She almost rushed out here herself. That's what led me here. It's probably good that you ran into me first. The Seafarers and Maginians are enemies. I'm sure those in Maginia would verify this. The conflict goes back generations. There's this ancient legend and, it's really ugly. I'm going to continue searching for that scout team. If you want a piece of advice, you probably shouldn't progress any further. I can't picture a meeting between Maginian adventurers and seafarers going very smoothly. Yeah? But, give me a reason to give a fuck. Looks like we're finally meeting up with them, huh? It was fun while I had the double crop ability temporarily, I guess. Wolfgar was nice because he probably recognized us, maybe. Oh my.
Yeah?
Can I remove stone? It's a cockatrice. Oh my god, I just realized. I really need prevent order. How could one such as I be so foolish?
You just run through and surprise.
Oh god, I got Tozer too!
17, running around. This level is all about the cloud car. You have to fly through to the end while trying to avoid the enemies and other cars. I like this level because it shows off how other objects can interact with the elements. Right away we start with a mushroom piloting a clown car towards us, and then we have to see how a few enemies like chain jumps and bill blasters work later. This level does feel kind of lazy since it's just a bunch of enemies and clown cars with nothing else, but at least it does a good job showing off some unique and
feels weird exploring High Lagarde with the new floors going downwards instead of upwards.
Cameo once again. This is an airship level all about the enemy. One thing I like about this level is that it looks like they actually tried with the aesthetic here, which they often don't in these samples. It starts pretty good with the first ship, but sadly the second one just devolves into a...
Did you need something? First glance, I'd say your adventures hide Virginia. Have you started exploring yet? Yeah, quite a bit by now. I see. Have you noticed anything strange? Labyrinths from other parts of the world have begun to appear. Why do you think that is? Yeah, it's very strange. Metal-wise, I'd say it's just the developers being lazy. Yes, I was curious about it myself, so I did some research on the Lemurian records. According to the text, these coincidental appearances are connected to an event from Lemuria's past. It seems in order to save themselves, the Lemurian people borrowed power from the many Yggdrasil trees across the world. I wonder what happened all those years ago.
じゃあね。
Sorry, didn't mean to keep you. I'm going to take some time and look around a little while longer.
そろそろ来ると思ってたぞ。
I want to punch
主
him.
張するぞ。
I don't know why, he just seems very punchable.
どうするの？ねえねえ。ん？だよね。決まったら気をつけていくんだぞ。
They translated it to...
お主たちか。冷やかしは許さぬぞ。何を売るのじゃ？取引成立じゃん。どうするのじゃ？銭を貯めたらまた来るのだぞ。
おや、君とどれにすっか決まったかな？
Ooh, heavenly gift.
これにするんだね。ん？どうするのかな？どれにそれにするんだね。どうするのか。それじゃ頼んだよ。おや、いやー、君たち。だはおや、何を報告？どうするのかな？それじゃ頼んだよ。
どうしたのかね。
Nice. Well, unfortunately, you guys all look alike. So, it's really hard to distinguish. Yo, so, bad news? Uriai Guild. I'm afraid Her Highness still isn't feeling well. What? You found a member of the Seafarers Princess Fleet? You don't know of the Seafarers, do you? Aginia has somewhat of a history with them. According to the legends, the Seafarers once attacked us a long time ago. If that's true, then they are indeed our enemy. I cannot decide our next move on my own. Once Her Highness recovers, I will consult with her on the proper course of action. I'd like you to continue exploring the labyrinth and locate the seafarer you saw earlier. Her Highness has never fallen ill like this before.
Oh, また来たな。記帳するぞ。気をつけていくんだぞ。
I am just playing on normal mode and I am overpowered. Like no other. However,
would
Once you find the correct door, all you have to do is avoid the big dry bones, and that's basically the level. Yeah, maybe this deserves to place a bit lower, but I really do appreciate that this level is probably the best looking one of the entire sample books collection. Yes, I love Dragon. 15. Bloom and Goombas. This is the cute idea of stacking piranha plants on top of Goombas. This is a good interaction to show, as it changes how you have to defeat these guys, and so you can no longer jump on them. Here at the end of the level, they also use big enemies to ramp up. Sadly, this is another one that falls to the extremely short curse, but what it had was kind of fun. 14. Shoe Factory. This is another one that's pretty good aesthetic-wise. This is supposed to take place in a Goomba shoe factory, so you have to avoid the ones coming from behind it. It also plays like conveyors, which fits the factory theme really well and makes the stage really harder. You can also use the giant Goomba stiletto to fight a secret room in the factory as well. Sadly, there are only 3 sets of pipes you have to run through, but they're each fun. I think this might be the first level in the list I consider to be fun. Guess where you're going. 13. 5 Extra Remix Shoe. This is easily my favorite of the remix sample stages. The reason that is because the remix is really cool, as this now shows off not only normal Goomba shoes, but winged and giant ones as well, which are obviously new to Mario Maker. Putting them in this familiar setting is honestly pretty smart, and it was fun going through this level with the different abilities. It also helps that getting a Goomba shoe in the original version of this level was really annoying. Like, why can't I just jump on it? I still don't love remix courses, but hey, this one is undeniably solid. 12. Chain Chomp. This is similar to the Muncher pixel art we saw before, but this time there's a bit of an actual level. It's still quite short, but they do use this idea far better. First off, I really like how the head is designed. Not only can you get a
Mother of mothers.
It's set up in such a way where you can break it to get a shell in, which I think is a really cool design choice. Then you have to jump between the chain links as actual chain chomps try to bite you.
Holy mother of mothers.
Again, this level is quite small, but what they did with it was 11. Perilous Vine Climb. This one is pretty short, but I like
Might as well go to an even 50.
It's on a track, but it's growing through a spike maze, so you have to climb it very carefully. I just think this was done very well, and it shows off a cool mechanic that could be used in other levels. I also like that they used the Super Mario Bros. Style here, since he climbs on the side of the vine rather than the center, so you have to keep that in mind when dodging the spikes. They definitely could have expanded on this, but I do like what it has right now. 10. Sub-Areas. This one doesn't really have a strong central theme, but it works as a pretty fun platform level. As the name suggests, you go through several sub-areas, but it's hard to say that's really a focus. Also, this level reminded me how the original Mario Maker did have cool stuff and did loud. Underground in this level, you'll be jumping across ice while avoiding Goombas, which is pretty fun. Above ground, you'll have to avoid chain chomps instead. The level also ends with this really weird and out-of-place one-way called 9. Pipelines to the Other Side. I sorted the title because like the song. This level is quite similar in a lot of ways to the last one, just having a bit of decent platforming. I like this more though because it does have a slightly more cohesive theme. It's separated into several different small rooms, with each of their own challenges revolving around. None of them are really that creative, but hey, it's fun enough. 8. Race to the Finish. This is easily the best auto-scroll level because instead of using it to slow the player down, it's made to speed the level up. You have to run through this castle, which you'll see empty besides the falling platforms. The level mixes it up sometimes by having the player need to run around some walls and also hit a block for a star. I really like how fast-paced this level is, and while it is short, that honestly didn't bother me that much since this level felt like it accomplished what it was going for. 7. Castle. With a level named that generic, you'd probably expect it to place quite low on the list, but actually this turned out to somehow be one of my favorites. Not that it's anything special, but I really just don't have any problems with it. It feels like an actual Mario castle, having a lot of obstacles like hammer bros, fire bars, and globs. I also really like how no blocks were used here, as they're used in platforming, to collect a 1-up, and even make a shortcut over the nearest block. The level ends with a skull coaster ride.
Patrice charm does definitely be useful.
Still, this felt like an actual level with a good length. Didn't feel too short, which is very rare among this level. Despite how generic this might be, I think it's the first level I'd for sure give a heart to. There were a few I'd be on the fence on from before, but from here on out, all the levels I'd actually be playing. Top 7, but I guess we got there in the end. 6. Ghost House. This is very similar to our last level, where it's a very generic name, but it's actually pretty well designed. The level starts with you having to make it past a few spike tops, and then you have to use a P-switch to access the cave. You can't fly over the whole level though, as that puts you into a maze-like area, which fits the Ghost House theme pretty perfectly. It's easy to navigate through, but fun at the same time, especially with the Dragons and Moos trying to attack you while you make your way up. Once you make your way through the maze, you then have to run past Kamek toward the end. Again, not the most complicated level in the world, but it actually has a solid length and was quite fun. 5. Don't Delay. This has a really strong theme. Once you enter into this door, you're placed on a track with saws moving toward you. Your goal is to run through the stage as quickly as possible so they can't catch you. Already, this theme is perfect for me, since running through the stages is what I like to do. What I love about this is that they also use the concept pretty well. While the saws are quite slow, there are plenty of other obstacles you have to avoid. You have to quickly climb up a bunch of blocks as cannons shoot at you, dodge some birders, fall down as the same cannonballs from earlier are still on their way, jump over some lava bubbles, and finally climb a vine while avoiding the last grinder. The level also ends with a Bowser fight, which isn't hard since you can just jump over it, but it's a good addition to throw on. Overall, I think the stage was pretty cool and had a good length. Happy they decided to actually try it.
Now our top 4 here all come from the final 17th world in this game. That's because all 4 of these levels were made specifically for the Nintendo World Championship in 2015, and they were thrown into a neat little bonus world. That means these are by far the hardest levels, and on top of that the longest as well, since they needed to be actual levels for the competition. So starting us off, we have 4, NWC 2015-1. This is in the Super Mario Bros. Style and starts off as a bit of a 1-1 remake. Instead of what you'd expect in the question mark blocks, though, they're enemies instead. There's also a bind that literally just gives you a single point, so to continue in this level, you have to take the pipe that normally brings you into the sub-area in the original, but now it takes you to an exact replica of where you just were. Well, luckily, running forward reveals the stage has changed with this abomination of an enemy tower and a wave of fire bars that you have to avoid with the line. Once you get past that, you then have to avoid piranha plants jumping from pipes, which brings you to my favorite part of the level. Here you have to chain several jumps on fast-moving conveyors, which feels really satisfying. It then transitions into jumps off paratroops, which feels even cooler on this play. Luckily, even if you miss, this level lets you retry, which is greatly appreciated. From there, all you have to do is descend down to the flag from the cloud. So yeah, this is much longer and harder than what we've seen so far. Of the bunch though, it's my least favorite since it feels the most hot garbage of them with all the random enemies. This does still have a lot going for it though, so it earns number 4. 3. NWC 2015-2. This one takes place in the Mario 3 style. It starts fairly challenging with the clown car obstacle course. There are a ton of enemies that you can avoid here, which can easily kill them. Once you finally make it out of the I ran into this well. Once you get out of there, you're then placed onto a ground segment, and pro tip, just run. All the pipes and question mark blocks are just enemies, so they're not helpful. Eventually that brings you to an area where you have to use a Koopa shell to clear a path in front of you, and then climb up on several different vines. That takes you to the next section where you get to use the Goomba shoe to jump on some enemies. That eventually culminates into one last cloud car ride past some enemies, which takes you into a pipe for the ending. Overall, I do think this was an improvement as it felt a little bit less chaotic. 2. NWC 2015-4. Going out of order here, we have the new Super Mario Bros. U level, which was meant to be the grand finale of the competition. It's by far the longest and hardest of the bunch. It starts off with a genuinely pretty tricky wall jump section past some grinders. Moving past that, you then have to do a somewhat tricky jump off this platform by going under this wall and wall jumping off the second. What is nice about this level, though, is that you can restart pretty much any section if you fail, which is greatly appreciated. Once you do that, you then have to ground pound through some blocks to get to the next section. After jumping across some winged blocks, we make it to the sub-area, which is sadly what holds us back from the number of spots. A large portion of this level takes place underwater, which is both quite easy and boring. I really wish this was replaced with some more platforming stuff. Luckily, once we get out of the water, we're back to some more interesting content. So we have to jump off of a Yoshi in order to wall jump over the spikes, allowing us to hit a P-switch so we can spawn. That brings us to a fairly tricky platforming segment on top of fire bars. It can genuinely be a challenge trying to time the jumps and find the right route. After that, we then have a bunch of miscellaneous challenging platforming segments such as platforms, moving blocks, and even a skull coaster. Eventually, the level ends with one final standoff against Bowser, which is pretty simple as you have to wait for him to jump. I really enjoyed this gauntlet of a level, and I think it's a great finale. If it didn't have the underwater section, it'd easily be my favorite sample course. But as for what actually ends up taking the crown, 1. NWC 2015-3. This is the Mario World level of the collection, and I really enjoyed it. It starts with 4 doors, which sadly does mean it starts with a Picador, but it's really not too bad. Going into number 3 puts us into a really scary cannonball jump scare that we have to outrun, but eventually the Buzzy Beetle we kick activates a P-switch to drop us into a chaotic spring-filled section with blasters. I really like how this section shows off how wildly all of the game's elements can interact with each other. From there, we have to jump past this wall and then make a pretty tricky jump off a cannonball. Once we do that, there's even more interesting jumps like bouncing off wigglers, donut blocks, and even some wicked Buzzy Beetles that get shot out of Will Blasters. All of these do a great job showing off how much variety there is in this game's platforming. Sadly, we do have another Picador section following that, but going into door 6 allows us to continue the level. We then have the option to use a bomb on these blocks or do a spin jump, which is a cool risk and reward decision. After that, we have another speed versus safety decision. First, you can take some extra time to gear up using this shell to get the fire flower. Running through the swamp area gives us the option to parkour off the platform, which if done successfully lets you skip the next part of the level. Sadly, I suck, so I had to make it slow round. That makes us take a small maze, which we have to run through quickly as there are a ton of Bowser shooting at us. That does, however, bring us to the end of the level, which we should run for ASAP so the Thwomp doesn't stop us. Overall, I am very happy that we got these 4 levels for the Nintendo World Championship in the game, because they were really needed to help bring up these sample courses. Happy we can at least end this video on a somewhat positive note. But anyways, that's it for this video. If you all really love thank you for skipping the levels given. I mean, I was really not expecting you to dislike so many of these levels, but it was at least interesting.
Using a trade skill, you'll be gaining experience and levels in minor skills with that major skill. And successful. Games now focus interaction was, but now the communication you often get in places like WhatsApp is gone. Downtime in the game is no longer needed to talk to other people, but it is still there, which means if you're playing alone, you'll be sat doing nothing a lot. Combine this with the fact the majority of live servers contain almost all of the player base at the end game, and as a new player on a live server, you will be adventuring through Norath alone for the vast majority of your gameplay experience, unless you specifically want to bring friends with you. Kill some rats and some bats and do some more local quests, and you'll notice your map is annotated with certain things, but not marked with enemy spawn locations, so quest mobs do take some time to find. I discover some items are not tradable, and while casting a spell or activating an ability, you get this little cast timer. If you're hit during it, you'll be interrupted, so casting in melee combat is a risk. However, the act of casting anything also improves your channeling skill, and with a high enough channeling skill, can tank some hits and not be interrupted. And now a movement issue. W is forward, S is backward, A and D is turn, unless you hold right click where A and D becomes strafe. So you cannot run forward and strafe and turn all at the same time, meaning you can't run diagonal while swinging the camera. Running sideways, running diagonal, running forward while turning the camera, but not all at the same time. I need to find a flower for a quest, and the map has no hints to where it may be, and then I'm injured, so I need to use a bandage, which means knowing the trade skill Bind Wound, then assigning that trade skill to a hotkey, then targeting whoever I'm healing, in this case myself, then activating Bind Wound with the hotkey, then waiting while I get better at the skill. That is a lot of focused steps, and this is something EverQuest is: detailed. Playing EverQuest as a new player feels like learning to fly a plane or operate an old proprietary computer operating system, and you're just handed a massive manual, wished good luck. There's a lot you can do. It's overwhelming, and learning it isn't easy. But once you get the hang of it, after however many hours, or in this case days it takes, you do feel in control. As Reddit puts it, EverQuest is a slow game. This is one of the great ironies of its modern state. Everyone tells me when you play an old MMORPG, don't rush to endgame. Play it slowly. Enjoy the journey. And okay, but if you do that in EverQuest, you're enjoying an extremely long, extremely slow, often very lonely journey, unless you're playing with friends you brought along at your own level. Because the majority of a community on a live server are either at the end game or to progression servers. Live regular servers don't have the mass of players either in the early or mid game needed to make enjoying the journey as magical as it was. There's no denying EverQuest is hugely influential in the genre. It built a lot of the foundations and systems other games would go on to refine, but over time, what we as players expect becomes harder to achieve, or you're harder to impress. Something that was once considered groundbreaking, when you return to it, is just a big pile of broken ground. Playing EverQuest without nostalgia is like listening to Elvis Presley. People will tell you how incredibly rebellious and groundbreaking Elvis was at the time. How Elvis mania swept the nation, even the famous line, "Elvis has left the building," caused mass excitement. But if you get someone not connected to any of that to listen to Elvis today, and the hype just isn't there, the social excitement, the atmosphere that made it all, if you've only got the music, it's good, but it's not the same experience. When you remove the product from the context which enhanced the product, you don't get the same impact. Shaking hips and crooning on stage used to be unacceptably sexy, but it paved the way for the media we know today. Now, we're so far ahead of the paved path, it looks quaint by comparison. New players cannot play through your memories, and playing EverQuest today is like listening to Elvis with no background information. Yeah, you can see the quality and understand that when it was new it would have been amazing, but it's not the rebellious, novel or exciting thing it used to be. And when hardcore enfranchised fans get annoyed at you for not enjoying it like they did, you might need to remind those fans it's much easier to enjoy something when the entire situation around it was intensely enjoyable. But now we've got the product without the situation. Back to the game. Tactical note: if you aggro an enemy mob, they will not stop chasing you across the whole map, but guard NPCs can kill them very fast. Doesn't give you experience, but does save you. My first kill 20 quest, and so the grind begins. I'm also told to press V to open the alternative advancement window. This lets you spend specific skill points on things, but applies to characters level 51 and above, so you as a new player will not need this. When you do hit level 5 though, you get some in-game mail and told about the Origin skill, which appears in the alternate advancement list, but is the only one you can take for free. It is a recall to Crescent's Reach. You can cast it for free once every 20 minutes. And a goblin finally drops a shield, and now I am resting after every fight. And now a good system for solo players, mercenaries or mercs. You can hire an NPC helper. They're free up to level 15 and then have a very small gold cost every 15 minutes, which is essentially a gold sink for the game. It's automatically paid, and if you're playing even semi-competently, you won't notice it. As I'm a melee tank, I think, you know what, I'll go for a healer mercenary. Everyone Serana. Then it seems I bought a mercenary without accepting the buy mercenary quest, so it didn't count. So I dismissed Serana and buy another fusion quest, so everyone meet Raunena. Mercs are great, incredibly tough, great, and decent damage. It's like you have a competent player alongside you at all times covering your weakest aspect. However, struggle with bridges and have a tendency to aggro enemies you're trying to avoid, so in fact they are exactly like other players. Thankfully, my spells seem to have pretty decent range, so I can grab the aggro from distant enemies. These spiders have some pretty decent modern graphics, and you can definitely tell when they've gone round and updated the enemy models. They look downright good. Now this quest needs me to open a chest, but at the time I didn't know you could target a container and type slash open. Instead, I just attacked it until it broke. And while doing this, another player, this frog necromancer called Goophopper, asks me why I'm hitting the chest. So we chat for a while and then pops off on his way. It's interesting to see that I'm not the only player, but little did I know, Saga of Goophopper become much deeper and much darker. Reach level 6 and get an exciting new mechanic, experience loss on death. Exact numbers are iffy. Seem to agree, dying loses you between 8 and 10% of your gained experience to the next level. For a game focused on enjoying the journey, they sure do make the journey tedious. Sell some stuff to a merchant, one item at a time, buy a new damage over time spell, then just work through the quest. And the slow progression does bring benefits. Winning a fight against 2 or more enemies feels amazing, like a genuine achievement. Does it feel amazing enough to justify being in the tutorial for 3 or 4 hours? No. While doing this, I chat to Goophopper some more and make my first EverQuest friend. Oh, when you pick up a new item, hold right-click on it for the info box. Red item names means you can't use them. Green means you can. If you click the little drop-down menu, you can compare it against what you've got equipped currently, which is great. Hey, remember the damaging disease cloud spell that takes damage for like 7 minutes? Don't cast it on yourself, because you will just poison yourself. EverQuest is likely to drive a complex gear, complete with being allowed to crash it if you make the wrong choice. But get my Skelly Boy summon spell to send into the mines and find this big chunky boy. I'll avoid you. Kill a load of captains, and honestly I'm getting a bit fed up with the combat music. It is a 30-second loop, incredibly intense, then it dies, and then restarts. Constantly. It sounds like this. Take on a mini-boss with Cool Hopper's assistance, and nothing is instanced. Quest items, enemies, mini-bosses, everything is public open world. So if someone finds the item you need or kills the mob you want, you will have to wait for it to respawn. Some of the respawns can take a while. This also means there are no dungeons in effect. There are just large open maps with bosses at the end that anyone can fight through, and then camp the final boss. Storm the fort deep into the mine, take down the boss alongside Cool Hopper again, finish every quest in the mine, get all the beginner armor, and then get sent to Crescent's Reach to begin my adventure in Norath proper. And now I find one of the best systems that EverQuest has for guiding players, the Hero's Journey Suggestion Path. Click the EverQuest button, then Quests, then Hero's Journey, and it will list all the recommended stuff for your level in the current area. And if you outlevel the area, it suggests the next area to go to. For a new player, this is great, because EverQuest treads that fine line between having an established narrative plot and just letting you explore around, and this gives you suggestions for where to go without demanding you do it. Run around this big grove, find these 6 arrogant dragons just sitting around doing nothing, and then head down to the guild hall and oh god, I'm over in the furry corner. I'm given a letter to take to Mistra in Crescent's Reach, and thankfully everything is signposted quite well. We're sent off to do some spider killing and mushroom foraging, and then I go for a nice swim. Interestingly, your ability to swim is based on how much weight you're carrying in total. More and you will sink faster, and with limited breath, you can indeed drown. Crescent's Reach itself is a grand, well-defended mountainside city. I discovered those spider and mushroom quests were repeatable, so if I need to grind some experience, I'll just do them again. Then I grab a lift to the upper levels, and the lifts are activated with these little buttons, although nothing tells you this. I just clicked around randomly. Alongside the Hero's Journey suggestion, on the achievement menu, a list of stuff you can do to earn achievement points. I don't know what these points are. Basically, this breaks down everything you can do in any expansion in the game. So if you're unsure of what to do, wherever you are, open the achievements, pick something, work toward it. Great little direction giver. So Crescent's Reach is 3 floors. The ground floor of shops and library, the first floor of trade, skills and vendors, and the top floor which is abandoned and full of massive skeletons. Now Jinkin has a load of quests for us, and the UI is beginning to get a bit easy. I look up some leveling guides to try and power level a bit, and it seems they're all based on which expansion you want to level through, or which expansion the current progression server is on, or where you are in the world. But the most repeated live service advice is follow the hero's journey or the achievement boosts. Grinding mobs is more efficient, yes. Doing quests helps you memorize the world, and is quite well paced. I need to pick up this pelt, this item, but it's too big to fit in this small bag. So you've got a main inventory, and then smaller bags you can put within your inventory and open up to give you more spaces. And despite items only ever taking up 1 inventory slot, some items are considered too big to fit within smaller bags, meaning lots of rearranging and putting the biggest items
Please tell me that was the last wave.
small stuff in the extra bags. I reach level 10 and get told about the Plane of Knowledge and how there's a weapon and armor quest waiting for me there. So the Plane of Knowledge is a hub zone introduced in the 4th expansion, Planes of Power, considered by many to be one of the better early expansions. You'll find many book pedestals around many maps which teleport you to the Plane of Knowledge, and then you can teleport from the Plane of Knowledge to basically anywhere. We'll see a lot of this place later. So how do we get there if we don't know where that book is? Well, another feature I love. Open the map and then click Zone Guide. This is a breakdown of every zone in the game. If you find where you want to go, click Add as End, and then find path with where you are selected as the start. The game will then show you all of the map connections or NPC travel connections you'll need to make to end up in any specific zone, and that's a wonderful in-game navigation system. It doesn't always work if you've got to take too many NPC connections, but it's a damn sight better than having to Wikipedia everything. For now, we leave Crescent's Reach and enter the connected moors. Welcome to Scotland, basically. There's fog, long sightlines and nothing, and a genuine sense of unease and foreboding. We'll be back here later a lot.
That's why the lady was all about, oh, will you help people who are your enemies? They're the enemies of Lemuria. We're not from Lemuria, though.
Find a tool and search for weapons quest. Follow the path, hail them.
The loyalty of Yuri first and foremost, and their only real alliance.
And unfortunately, being an edgy emo dragon boy, most people do not like me. That's why I'm forced to hang out with the furries and the scalies. The armor quest from here sends me.
Their only allegiance is to themselves, the Yuri Guild.
No problem at all, and we're sent to the east to kill some zombie dwarves. But notice that we don't have a map now. Turns out not all zones worlds in EverQuest are mapped. They were sort of relying on the community to make physical actual maps and share them around, and as old school and immersive as that sounds, not many modern players will want to do that when that just means having a map open on a second monitor. But never fear, because third-party apps are here to help, specifically the Braywall Map Pack, which means downloading the map pack, opening up your EverQuest map folder, making a new folder, moving some files around, and now when you open the map in-game, change the drop-down from default to Braywall, and boom, every zone in the game mapped. But not just that, NPCs labelled, quest mobs shown, ground spawn items highlighted, everything's labelled, and you can even search for things by keywords and then draw paths to them. Seriously, thank you Braywall, this is fantastic. We're told to go to a giant chessboard to the east, and without Braywall's maps, I'd never find this, because east is actually back all the way around south, and you'll notice it's moving from day to night in the game. EverQuest has a day-night cycle, and certain mobs, sometimes quest mobs, only spawn at certain times of the day.
Yuri definitely doesn't prefer having enemies.
This means if you miss a quest mob that only spawns at night, you can sometimes be waiting for up to 45 minutes for it to appear again. Take on 2 enemies and feel like an absolute tank, realise I've got loads of travel ahead of me, so I just bind auto run to T. But then I discover when I press T, not only runs, but links the tell command of the last person I was talking to. And that's how I discovered that in EverQuest, you can bind multiple commands to a single key. It won't say, there's a clash, you can't do this, it'll just say, okay, everything happens at once. In most MMOs this will be a problem, but EverQuest seems to embrace this because it adds to the sheer complexity of the game. For example, you could bind target self to a macro, then cast heal to a macro, and then both those macros to the same button. Means whenever you press it, you target yourself and immediately cast heal. EverQuest very much has the training wheels taken off. It's an in-depth machine with no manual. I need to kill 4 haunted dwarves around this tower, and the respawn timer is taking its sweet time, and after 20 minutes I can return to the Plane of Knowledge and get a new item, any better than the stuff random mobs were dropping in malls. I tried to find some more quest NPCs in the Plane of Knowledge by using the find feature, but I get told I'm underleveled for almost all of their quests, but you don't find this out after going through their dialogue tree to where the quest would start. I decided to just follow the hero's journey advice, return to Crescent's Reach, and get grinding, killing bears and knobs, and my god, I need some more inventory space. Grind up to level 11, try to cast a spell on an enemy underwater, and get told the water distorts your view. So not only this thing's so blocking.
Holy damn.
I punch up with an alligator, and then I throw all my junk into the Crescent Reach bank. Important note, banks are universal, but the shared bank can be accessed by your other characters on the same server. While here, I decided to learn a trade skill, baking. How hard can baking be? Well, this bit took me about 45 minutes. You need to make oatmeal. You're given some oats and some water. Okay, cool, I can do this. Right-click, combine. No. Click and drag. No. Oh, of course. Right-click the crafting stations within the room that I got given the quest. And this opens this kind of interface. And you can combine things together, but I don't know the recipe, so I click experiment, and then I combine water and oatmeal. And no, that doesn't work either. How do I do this? Okay, so you need to buy a mixing bowl from this guy, but the game won't tell you that. Then make sure the bowl is in your main inventory slot, not an extra bag slot, because a bowl is a container item within itself, which will open up when you right-click on it. And then you click on experiment and put water and oats into the experimental slots. But if you're experimenting, you can only put 1 water and 1 oats in, not all of them. The game will let you put all of them in.
This song kind of sounds familiar.
One thing at a time. Then you
I think the song they're using is heavily inspired by something.
On the main screen, but you sometimes fail. And the
it's not entirely surprising. For older games, soundtracks to blatantly just be stealing
because for some reason the blue hyperlinks now don't lead back to the same conversation.
From existing
oatmeal that you have to them before
songs.
They give you any extra. Don't know why you've made it that of juice. And it doesn't seem
I'm an idiot.
Faster. So I checked the forums and it turns out that carrying food and water on you doesn't do anything. At least not actively. You don't eat it or drink it, you just have it on you and it's consumed every hours, and if you have any, your health and mana regen is a lot slower. Oh hey, Ghoulhopper's back, and damn, he's level 19, fast leveling frog. I tell him to download the Braywall map pack, and this is how old school games were. You collectively struggled until someone helped you with random advice. But it was much easier to give random advice when there were thousands of people struggling. Not 2. You know the old MMO meme, go and collect 10 bear asses? Well, that is legitimately a quest here, and it is tedious. Now, I'm still playing the free version, which has to be commended for having so much content, but every now and again you'll get a pop-up advertising membership, and it can happen in the middle of combat, which can be quite distracting if you're in a difficult fight, especially when it pops up over your hotbar. And this is the first quest I feel is just padding. I have to kill 5 gnolls to find 5 ore drops, but then 5 more gnolls to find 5 ore bits, and they're the same item. You just change the name, just collect 10 ore, it's the same thing. But now, Astor story takes a somewhat
These
unusual
things
turn.
are
While playing,
instantaneous.
I've been chatting to Ghoulhopper, so we had each other on Discord. And we discover we've met before. 4 years ago, on Final Fantasy XIV. We have no other servers in common, and Ghoulhopper doesn't know that I make videos, and this was before I started making videos anyway. So what a random coincidence. MMORPG games feel massive, but sometimes we are reminded that the total global player base is still relatively small in gaming terms. I grab some items, the quest says I have them, but I cannot for the life of me find them in my inventory, so I wonder if they've been sent to my bank, so I find another great system while I'm at the bank. At your bank, you can choose Find Item, and it will list every single item you're carrying or have stored, and where it is, down to the exact slot. And this is how I learned that the Mixing Bowl, despite being a trade skill item, also functions as a container, and stuff has been going into it. I take a quick peek into the third floor of Presence Reach, and I am still very underleveled. Come back here later. But what I really need is a new weapon. And it seems weapon shops in the game don't have stats, which is strange, so I ask around, and right, the weapons sold in most of these in-game shops are just cosmetic overrides for other actual statted weapons. The weapons you want to get are from quest rewards or enemy drops. And while there is an in-game auction house and economy, because most players are on members-only progression servers, the economy of free servers is incredibly slow and very heavily weighted to just the high end. More quest in the Plane of Knowledge. I'm sent to the northern desert of Roe. The in-game guide takes me to Ice Mountain, which is the wrong way. I actually need to go to Freeport.
Like the variety here.
Yes, I guess navigation isn't always perfect. I settle in to punch some snakes, and the desert is an absolute chore. I spend this time watching guides, reading up and playing walkthroughs. I've learned the following. Not use a healing mercenary, use a tank mercenary.
It's kind of strange how there's just
long-term players on
less hordes of enemies this game throws at you. I guess it has to do with the fact that there's just more AoE attacks now, unlike in the previous games.
So what is that? Well, multiboxing is the art of using software to run multiple instances of
So they can't technically challenge you anymore by just spamming lots of enemies.
By yourself. If you don't want to do this, if you just want to solo, you have to accept that the game is incredibly slow. EverQuest is designed so that every time you form a party, it is greater than the sum of its parts. A tank is super efficient when they are joined by a DPS and a healer. A healer can't kill anything unless they're being buffed by a bard. A bard will die unless they have a tank. When you have a group, it's great. When you don't, it's tedious. So I followed the advice, grab a tank mercenary, and on my way bump back into Ghoulhopper, and he gives me a Macy's fan. It's a better weapon, so this is good. Grab some new spells from my guildmaster, and off we go. Now, remember how every aspect has a skill number? I am fizzling so much on my new spells, it's not even worth trying to use them. Ooh, nice new mechanic. This quest needs me to kill an actual NPC in town, which means waiting for the guards to leave so I can hitman them in peace. Nice little mechanic there. Quick note about the hero's journey window. It does not update live, so if you complete a task in it, you need to close it, then reopen it to have that task removed or replaced. Look at this group of players all adventuring together, or single-player multiboxing. Never know. Sometimes you'll finish a quest and need to return to an NPC to get a reward. Sometimes you'll finish one and just get a reward wherever you are, and I don't know what the difference is between the two. Start this incredibly long quest of completing a favour for every member of the council, and stupidly I accept all the quests without thoroughly reading them because I'm in a hurry and the quest journal does not give you a full recap. Thankfully, the Alakazam EverQuest wiki has full text logs of everything. So I find a bottle in a pond, buy a wind chime, capture some mist, light a torch, forge a sword, nettle, find a leaf, grab some bones, read a very small book, solve a riddle, summon a ghost wolf, and finally cast Sea Invisibility to find a hidden scout. And all this takes about an hour and a half. Now the council has a new man. On to the next quest, romancing everyone. And to be fair, this is quite fun. A guy fancies a girl and sends you with a message, but she fancies somebody else, so sends you with a message, but they fancy somebody else, so sends you with a message, but they fancy somebody else, so sends you with a cake, and that person doesn't like cake, so throws it away. There's another quest where this dude attempts to poison the council member, but the councillor is immune to poison, so sends you back with a polymorph sheep potion to teach them a lesson. And now, finally, after I've sorted all the local problems and poisoned most people, in the epic, ungodly long Serpent's Seeker's Charm of Law quest. Now this epic quest design of the Serpent's Charm I actually really like. Expansion pack The Serpent's Spine brings with it a load of maps, enemies, and areas. And what this epic quest does is weave a narrative thread through absolutely all of them. As a librarian in Crescent's Reach leads you to find a load of rare items, about 30 of them, and they're all hidden in various maps. To follow this achievement path, you'll be led through every single map, slowly progressing in difficulty, ending in a raid boss. And every item you find, the librarian gives you which is encouraging the player to explore and be curious about every map they're in. I wish more games had integrated systems like this. Many others about places called hot zones, maps with increased experience or armor rewards for day one. That's a level 20 thing, so we'll come back to that. It might be useful for power level. Back to the desert, I think some giant snakes. I'm sure it's they are a rare spawn. Must kill a load of regular enemies and just hope a giant one spawns, and it takes literal hours to find them. They then head to another map where the giant spawn is more common, but those ones don't count. I just grind for ages, but finally hit level 15, which unlocks a load of new quests and Hopper returns to hack for bountiful items I can use. Then I'm sent off to a farm to kill some undead and plant some flowers while I'm at it. Now may also be a good time to point out that I have ravens. It's a 45 minutes long debuff, and I've also discovered that as a Shadow Knight, my tanking job is just repeatedly cast Light Tap, which steals the enemy's HP and refills mine. Slow, but extremely reliable, and I do very little damage. One of the issues with leveling a tank or a healer through EverQuest, especially solo, is it will take an absolute age to kill anything. The majority of your experience is spent to very slow process. 30 minutes here, hit level 17, then up to Christmas Reach, and finally get sent to the third floor to kill them both. So EverQuest is like being slower than many modern games are going to be. What's up with? It does have a great feeling. And I love
6 hours sleep. Epic.
Low,
7.
Feels like higher level quests as you progress through the city.